Hello, I'm Tony Vlahos for ExecuNet. Long-lasting solutions to everyday work problems. That's what everyone in the executive suite desires. With me today is someone who comes at this with a fresh look from a slightly different perspective. Erin Cohn is a senior partner with Leadership and Design, a small nonprofit consulting firm that facilitates change and innovation processes using the framework of human-centered design. Her work includes strategic planning, leadership development, faculty professional development, and a variety of other initiatives focused on organizational change. Beginning in July 2019, Erin will take on the role of Director of Wordle Center for Leadership at Smith College, and she joins me now. Hi, Erin.
Hi there.
How are you doing?
I'm very well. How are you?
Wonderful, thank you. So I know you're very focused on helping people come up with long-lasting solutions to challenges. Could you tell me why the solutions many of us come up with simply don't always work out?
Yeah, so from my perspective, a lot of times the sort of failed solutions are the ones that are not human-centered. Human-centered is sort of the big buzzword or catchphrase that goes along with human-centered design. But what that really means is that solutions that are sort of created in a vacuum and aren't related to the actual human beings that are, what a designer would call the user of that solution, right? So the people who are intimately or directly affected by those solutions. So oftentimes we'll kind of, be by ourselves just sort of thinking up a solution to a problem rather than really going out and spending time being curious and trying to kind of understand the people who we're designing for. And so, if I think about an example of that, you might think about like the Segway. Are you familiar with the Segway as a product that exists?
Yes, the
Yeah.
vehicle. Yep.
The vehicle, yeah, exactly. So, like, the Segway is a really good example of a solution that was not particularly human centered. It
Mhm.
was invented by a guy named Dean Kamen, and he used this. It was basically using technology that he had created in order to get a wheelchair. He invented a wheelchair that could go upstairs, and so there's this really cool technology. And he thought, how else could I use the technology? And so took that technology and created the Segway, which then, he predicted was going to be the kind of biggest thing in transportation, right? It was going to completely transform people's lives. There's a quote from him that he was going to be to the car what the car was to the horse and buggy, right? That we were going to see complete transformation of sort of transportation and urban environments. And as we know, that didn't happen. And that's largely because it was a solution to a problem that was sort of the solution came first as opposed to the problem coming first. And so, in
Got it.
a lot of ways, it's a good example of a kind of not human centered solution to a problem.
It's a great example. What are some ways that we can create solutions that work, Erin?
So I would say that there's lots of ways that designers in particular really engage in creating kind of human-centered solutions, and really the beginning of that is just being, what I like to say, be more curious than certain. That curiosity, coming at things from the frame of curiosity as opposed to being sure of what the answer is going to be. And in some ways, it's also kind of putting on the hat of almost the anthropologist, right, and
Mhm.
trying to become really just curious about the people for whom and with whom you're designing solutions. And that means really like taking on that beginner's mindset and trying to understand folks as though you are an anthropologist, rather than someone who kind of has all the answers or is expected to know all the answers from the start.
Yeah, that's a brilliant way of looking at it. Thank you. So you mentioned one of the buzzwords. There are several, of course, problem-solving buzzwords, and some that leap to mind include words like empathy and human-centered, as you said, design thinking. What do we need to know about each of them, and how can they help us?
So empathy is an interesting one in particular. It's a word that I think is a major buzzword that gets kind of tossed around and means a lot of different things to different people. The most common definition of empathy is sort of walking in someone else's shoes, but it's also really associated with that kind of emotional connection that you might have with other people, to say like, I really care about this other person, and so I'm going to create a solution that will show that care. But as designers understand that word empathy, and particularly the way that they use it in their work, it's very much not just about caring about another person, but also understanding their worldview and also their circumstances well enough to be able to create solutions that actually will make change in their lives, as opposed to, creating something that shows you care about someone, but ultimately the outcome doesn't actually work for them because of various circumstances that they're involved in. And so empathy becomes important as a tool, or really I see it as more of like a mind frame or a mindset that you have, that you're always trying to kind of really just see and understand another person's worldview and circumstances. And I think that that is challenging. I think that it's not possible perfectly. It's impossible to do it in a perfect way. But that the more you strive to do that, the more likely you are to create solutions that are going to kind of last long term.
Right, absolutely. So let's talk about your work at Smith. You're running a mini online course, and it's designed to help people use the techniques we're talking about. Tell me more about what you'll be doing there.
Sure. So it's a mini course that's going to offer participants an opportunity to take a problem or a challenge that they face in their own work, whatever that might be, and really approach it with this kind of anthropological or empathic curiosity. And so we're going to give some tools for folks to be able to do that, and then kind of use those insights that they gain from that work to create kind of lasting human-centered solutions to the problems. So it's really going to be sort of a move at your own pace for the first set of assignments, with some videos and some exercises to help people understand how to do particularly what we call empathy interviews. And so really talking to some folks who are going to be impacted by the solutions that the participants are going to be creating. And so that might be different for different people. One example might be trying to figure out how to make feedback in your team go better, right? So that we have more meaningful, useful feedback within our
Well,
team.
that's a big one.
Yeah, so that's one possibility, but I can imagine lots of folks will come at this with different kinds of challenges. And what's great about this approach is that it really applies in lots of different ways, not just for products like the Segway, for example, but also
Right.
for, sort of human experiences or team, connection, or there's lots of different ways that you can apply this. So participants will use those tools and do some of that empathy research. And then on April 11th, we'll gather online together, and we'll engage participants in kind of thinking through, how do we make sense of all this sort of empathy research that I just gathered? How do I take what I've learned, really surface whatever insights might come out of it, and then use those insights to kind of prototype and test some possible solutions. So they'll be given some tools to do that, and also have access to the session recording long term. So that's kind of
Well, it
how to take.
sounds like a brilliant program and learning opportunity and a chance to work with you, which sounds awesome as well. Thank you
Great.
so much for making time and talking to me today. And I look forward to learning more from you and, of course, what's happening at Smith. So thank you, Erin.
Absolutely. Thanks for your time.
You bet.